In this video, we will show you how to replace your parking brake shoes. Let's get started. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel is off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on with a small pry bar to remove your center cover. Continue on to removing all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. With the wheel out of the way, you have a nice clear view of your brake caliper. Inside the back here, you're going to find that you have a caliper piston. We need to push that back just a little bit so we can remove the caliper from the area. I'll use my small pry bar, gently pry between the caliper and the rotor. Once you have a little bit of movement, we'll continue on to removing our 2 10mm headed slider bolts. Now we can remove the caliper from the area. Where my thumb is, you're going to find a tab that you can gently squeeze down and roll the caliper out of position. Once the caliper's off of there, just have a quick look at your brake pads. Make sure it doesn't look like they're worn or damaged in any way. We'll set this aside, making sure that we put no pressure on our flex hose. The next thing that you will want to do is remove the brake rotor from the area. Carefully grab onto this, give it a little wiggle, and slide it off and away from the vehicle. Give that a quick inspection as well. With the rotor out of the way, we can see the emergency brake shoes and some of the hardware. We're going to carefully start prying up on one of the emergency brake shoes, trying to separate this area so we can remove the adjuster located right here. I'll use my pry bar and some long nose pliers to carefully remove that adjuster. Once you have your adjuster out of there, give it a quick inspection. Make sure it doesn't look rusted, rotted, or damaged in any way. We'll be cleaning this up and setting it aside. Continue on with your long nose pliers and remove this spring from inside the emergency brake shoes. Now let's have a look at this side of the emergency brake shoes. You're going to find another spring. This runs along the back side of the shoes. Right up in this area, you can see the corner of the spring that comes through the shoe holding it in place. We'll carefully use a small prying device and gently push that spring out of the hole in the shoe. Now let's move along to the anchor pin and the clip. We'll use a screwdriver or pry bar. Gently press in on the clip. When you do that, it releases the pin. Now we can slide the pin towards the hole in the clip. Now I can remove my locking clip. We can remove one of our shoes. It's a good idea to remove each pin from the backing plate to give it a good inspection. And now we'll move down to the bottom, removing that clip and pin as well. We'll remove the shoe with our other spring. Give that spring a close inspection. Set it aside. Let's remove that pin for our inspection on that as well. The next thing that you will want to do is clean the backing plate along where your brand new emergency brake shoes will be sitting. We'll use a little parts cleaner and a wire brush. Once you've completed on that side, make your way over here. You're going to find 2 grooves where the shoes sit inside of. Use your brush to make sure those are nice and clean. Once that's clean, continue on to inspecting the actuator for your emergency brake shoes. You should find that if you were to pull on the emergency brake cable on the back side, the actuator can move freely. If it feels as though it's stuck, you're going to want to free it up with some penetrant. Continue on with some high temperature brake lubricant. You want to make sure you go inside each of the grooves where your shoes are going to sit. Also, you're going to make your way around the backing plate on all of the raised areas. These are the areas that the e-brake shoes sit up against. The next thing that you will want to do is disassemble and inspect your adjuster. We'll get the threading all cleaned up and lubricate it with something so no moisture can get it seized up on us. Okay friends, let's get ready for our installation. You want to make sure that you have the shoes in the proper orientation. You'll find on one side of the shoe, you have a carve out that looks like this, and on the other side, you'll have a squared out notch. We're going to be working on the side that has the notch that looks like this. We'll take the upper shoe and put it in this position. Continue on with this spring. Now if you were to look at the spring, you're going to find that you have the coil area with this area that comes down like this. You want to make sure you have it in the proper positioning, because if you have this turned over like that, this is going to hit up against your ABS ring. With that said, I'll put it in the proper position. Now we'll take it behind the shoe and we'll put it through this hole. Now at this point, we can take the spring with the shoe and slide the spring down behind the actuator. We'll rest that in its position. We'll use our long nose pliers underneath this area to grab the other side of the spring. At this point, we're going to pull it out towards the front of the bearing hub. Now we can take the shoe and put it through the corresponding hole. There we are. Now that I have it through its corresponding hole, we'll slide this into the proper position. Make sure you have your actuator inside the area of the shoe where it belongs as you slide this down. Let's move along to reinstalling one of our mounting pins and clips. We'll slide this pin through the back of the backing plate through the slot in the e-brake shoe. Now we'll take the clip and put it in position. You'll notice looking at the outboard part of the clip, you have the larger area and then you have a much smaller area farthest away near my index finger. We want the pin to end up sitting inside that small area so it's locked in place. Slide this down. Continue on to your smaller spring. We'll put this in position on the lower slot of each shoe. Now we can take the bottom shoe and start pulling this down. We need to create an area between the two shoes for our adjuster to fit in between. When we put this in here, you want to make sure you have the adjuster in the proper positioning with the adjustment cog facing down. Make sure the adjuster is sitting properly in the grooves. Let's continue on to our other pin. We'll slide this through the backing plate and out through the shoe. Install your locking clip. Right behind the adjuster, on the backing plate, you'll find that you have a rubber boot. I'll go ahead and pop that right out of there. The next thing that you would want to do would be to put the rotor on here and make an adjustment for the emergency brake shoes. To do that, you would use your bar, come right in through the backside of the backing plate up against that adjustment cog. You can turn this one direction or the other to make the adjuster either go out or in. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have the rotor on and something holding the rotor in place up against the hub. While you're adjusting it, you're going to try to turn it a little bit and feel for a little bit of drag. You don't want to have very much drag because drag will cause friction and friction causes heat, which will make the shoes expand and potentially lock up. So if you can feel a little bit of drag, just turn it back one notch and make sure that you can still spin the wheel freely. Before we continue putting our rotor on, it's important to make sure you clean the mating surface of your axle hub and the backside of the rotor where they make contact. We'll use a wire brush for this. Copper never seizes on your mating surface. We'll use one of our lug nuts to hold this in place. With the rotor held in place, come along the backside. We'll make that adjustment that I spoke to you about. While I'm doing this, I'm going to try to spin the rotor a little bit. If it doesn't want to spin, you should try to put your vehicle in neutral. As you can hear right there, I have a little bit of drag. It's not something that's stopping the rotor from spinning, so I'm sure that I'm not going to cause too much friction and an overheating condition. At this point, we'll go ahead and put in our protective plug. All right, now we can get ready to install our caliper. When you do this, you want to make sure that both of your sliders can flow freely. Now while we put this in, make sure that you have your slider pins pushed away from the inboard brake pad here. We can take this and start putting it in position down along the bottom first, sliding it over the brake rotor. We'll make sure that slider pin's pushed out of the way and roll it up. As we press it in, we're waiting for this clip to make its way underneath the bracket. That'll hold it in place, and we can continue on with our two 10mm caliper slider bolts. Start each of these in, snug them up, and then torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Remove your lug nut. Get ready to install your wheel. Once your wheel's up on there, start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom these out, get the wheel safely back on the ground, and then torque each of these lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Now that we have this on the ground, let's torque these in a crisscross manner. If you have a center cover, go ahead and put that on now. Okay friends, we showed you how to do one side of your parking brakes. The other side of the vehicle will be the exact same thing. Once you've done that, make your way into the passenger compartment, pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm, and make sure your parking brake functions properly.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.